Hello there, you are looking miserable as always.
Of course I am. The world economy is on the verge of collapse.
Oh no, not this again. The economic crisis ended 2 years ago, and since then we have been on the slow yet steady road to recovery. Didn't you see Obama's recent budget? He is predicting healthy economic growth in the US, with the deficit dropping from 11 to 3% of GDP by 2015.
I am afraid that his claim is hopelessly over-optimistic, and so are you. The economic depression has not been averted, it is just about to start. Total U.S. debt obligations have now reached almost $80 trillion. This is greater than the world's annual GDP. Obama has merely created the illusion of growth by allowing the Federal Reserve to print more money with quantitative easing too. This has boosted the stock market but done nothing for the real economy, because the money created is not based on real products and services. In fact, every time a new dollar is printed in this way, the real value of the dollar as a currency decreases by a tiny fraction.
Surely this does not actually matter, as the dollar has been a powerful currency for many years. Most overseas trading is done in dollars, and this increase in trading must therefore give the dollar economic value, as countries cannot afford to go without it.
I'm sorry, but what you have just said is not consistent with the facts. Overseas countries are trying desperately to find other sources of currency, as their faith in the dollar has been reduced to zero. Look at China, for example. They have been buying gold at an astonishing rate to protect themselves against a possible collapse of the dollar. Physical gold is a stable resource and does not drop in value as opposed to paper currencies.
So, you really think the financial world will collapse like Germany in the 1930s? That is ridiculous.
That is exactly what I am suggesting may happen. Look in the history books if you don't believe me. Debasing a national currency inevitably leads to inflation, which in turn inevitably leads to the destruction of that nation's economy. Take the Roman Empire, for example. By the end of the 4th century, they had so debased their currency that their economy was effectively choked to death. No one lent anything to anyone else unless they were guaranteed payment in gold or silver bullion.
But how does that apply to Western societies today? I don't see the connection.
Simple mathematics. Cheap money leads to speculation, and speculation leads to debt. When it is difficult to borrow money because of high interest rates, people tend to think very carefully before doing so, and when they do, they are much more likely to invest in real products and services that will guarantee them their money back, things like manufactured goods or applied scientific research. On the other hand, when it is easy to borrow money, when the government maintains very low interest rates, the speculators move in and start gambling on property, stocks, and shares. What they then create is a bubble economy. It is not real wealth.
But we all need banks, and gambling on the stock market in history has given us a lot of wealth that we enjoy today.
Only when it is kept under control. If left unchecked, the debt accumulated by the bank's speculation exceeds the value of their underlying assets. If they then went broke, it might not matter. But what has happened over the last 3 years is that the politicians have bailed them out by piling their debts onto poorer people, small businesses, and the middle classes by means of higher taxes and higher debt service. This is what the term bank bailout really means. It means the transfer of these speculative gambling debts to ordinary people. You have lived through the greatest theft in history and you don't even know it. On top of this, the value of everyone's savings is then further eroded due to inflation and eventually hyperinflation.
You are seriously suggesting that this is happening today? Get out of town. Inflation is only at 4%. The stock market is growing, the economy is recovering, and you are prattling on about economic collapse. Don't you watch the news, you moron? Bad weather occasionally causes stunts in growth, but that's it.
Food hyperinflation and the debasement of the dollar are blindingly obvious to me, but will never be obvious to you if that's where you continue to get your information from. The 24-hour news culture is even more debased than our crappy fiat currencies. Sky, Fox, the BBC, and all the others tell you what has happened but not what is happening. Last year, a boy with $1 in the US could go into a shop and buy 2 chocolate bars and a shake. Today he could only buy 1 chocolate bar. That is not just inflation, it is hyperinflation. It is starting from a low base admittedly, but it is hyperinflation nevertheless.
That's because the demand for chocolate in that shop increased, not because of inflation. Dumb base, ha ha ha.
You are joking now, but you won't be joking when your bourgeois eating habits are snatched away from you and you are fighting for a tin of Spam and farm foods. The prices for all different types of food are skyrocketing due to speculation. Investors have lost confidence in stocks and are speculating on a wide range of commodities to hedge themselves against the collapsing dollar because they see how worthless it has become. For example, the investment demand for precious metals has increased because investors believe if they leave their saving in paper currencies, inflation will cause those savings to be worth next to zero. Therefore, I have made a number of investments in commodities and metals.
You are not just a moron, but a paranoid too. It is inconceivable that governments would let this happen, as no one can possibly profit from a crash.
Wrong yet again. The super-wealthy international bankers will profit from this by purchasing all the assets at rock-bottom prices, just like the Rothschilds did after the Napoleonic Wars. Stocks and shares plummeted on the London Stock Exchange when those guys spread the rumor that Britain had lost the war. The exact same thing will happen again when the dollar collapses. All the debts will be burdened onto poor people, all the stocks and shares lose their value, and all the assets will be bought up by the super-rich elites.
This is a conspiracy theory. There is no such thing as a super-wealthy elite which want to purchase the entire stock market after the dollar collapses. That information is from unreliable psychos such as Noam Chomsky, Alex Jones, Max Kaiser and George Galloway.
This is no conspiracy. By significantly devaluing the currency through quantitative easing, the gap between the general population and the top 10 or so percent has increased dramatically, which will mean the poor having to forfeit their assets to the wealthy banks who are able to continue a process of speculation, bailout, speculation with the complicity of the US and many other governments.
Well, of course we have to bail out the banks or we would all find ourselves under martial law in the consequent chaos, you dickhead.
Again, that is not true. The banks in Iceland were allowed to fail. The criminal bankers were then thrown in jail, but there was no martial law enforced. The Icelanders did this because a bailout would simply have delayed and worsened a self-destructive hyperinflation situation and caused high unemployment and poverty like Germany in the 1930s or Zimbabwe in the last decade. To threaten a country with martial law and to cripple the economy in this way is nothing short of financial terrorism and should be dealt with by the Obama administration, as it is their job to protect the people from terrorism and starvation. They have simply done the opposite.
No. Obama promised real change and this is what he is doing. I cannot trust any of this information as it is from George Galloway, who supports Syrian dictators, Chomsky, who has no brains, and crazy internet conspiracy theories. I think the economy will get better and everything you just told me is bollocks. Goodbye.